Are you someone that likes to plan with Sharpies? Creating that plan, that permanent plan with the Sharpie, that it must go a certain way, only to find out that if it doesn't go that way, we end up very disappointed and frustrated and angry, and we want to throw in the towel? Well, if that is you, or it has been you in any point in your life, you're going to want to stick around for episode 25.
We all have situations, experiences, and moments in our life when we know deep at our core we have to do something different. We have to pivot. And regardless of how big or small that pivot is, it requires us to change something in our life. And that change can feel really uncomfortable. However, it is that change that is creating something entirely new. And it is that newness that creates a very different way of life in one area or multiple areas of our life. What's this all about? It is all about reinventing thyself. My name is Michelle Shutter, and I'd like to welcome you to Reinventing Thyself. I am so glad that you joined me today, because it is here that we'll move beyond our old self, our old identity, and that trailer of garbage from the past that we like to pull into the future, but really need to ditch that hitch. It is here that we'll move into that place of reinvention and embracing the newness of it all. Are you ready to step into reinventing thyself? Because guess what? It is never too late, and your time is now. Let's get started.
Hey, welcome back to episode 25. I'm super excited that you are here today. Yes, this episode is episode 25, not last week where I incorrectly had called that episode 25. This one is 25. And so today we are going to dive into reinventing ourselves from a place of really looking at, are we writing our plans with Sharpies? That permanent plan. And before I dive in, remember there really are 4 different components to reinventing yourself in some way. It's really leaning into that pivot, because that pivot wouldn't be here if you weren't ready. It is embracing the change and all the new lessons that are to be learned. It is about moving boldly through that new beginning and beyond. And it is finding your greatness and really bringing that to life and expanding that and bringing it out in the open, finding that greatness in the gap. Because remember, anytime we want to do something different, we want to change, we are going to step out of our comfort zone in some way, we are stepping into the gap. So this is going to really impact you. And actually, before I even hop into this Sharpie talk, I want to make sure that you are aware of my upcoming webinar. And that is where we are going to dive deeper into finding your greatness in the gap. We're going to talk about what the gap is, how it's created, how it operates, how you can access your greatness at a whole new level. We're going to talk about the pitfalls, and we want to talk about sustaining your greatness in the gap. So we're going to cover all of that and so much more in the upcoming webinar. So if you want details on that, you're going to want to go to www.greatnessinthegap.com. Now, let's talk about this. We all know that quote, failing to plan is a plan to fail. However, if we are creating our plan with Sharpies and we are making that plan permanent, are we setting ourselves up to fail? And I use that Sharpie as an analogy to really talk about, what are we using to make our plans? Because if we write it out in Sharpie and we perceive that as permanent, we really move into this space of, it has to go this way. This is my plan. And I am going from A to B to C to D. I'm going in a linear path. This is exactly how it should go. And when we are so wrapped up in this certain way, it really is exposing our deep desire to have to control, our deep desire to control the way it goes, the outcome. It's our attachment that is starting to come through about the outcome. And all of this comes to light when you enter the gap. It's really what this is showing you as a reflection of all this old garbage that wants to resurface and really keep you in the same place. When we come from this place of control, that we want it to be a certain way, and this is how it's going to go, we're really vibrating at a very low energy. And that low energy is not compatible with the energy that it requires us to get to the end of the gap, to get to our end result. So if we are trying to move through this gap with this perception that this is the way it has to go, it isn't going to work out in our favor. Here's generally what happens is that we enter that gap and we have that mentality, those thoughts, those feelings. And as we start to move through the gap, it looks like we're moving forward. Yep, I'm checking things off my list. But all of a sudden, in the most unexpected way, when we least expect it, the gap will snap us back to the beginning at right where we started. And I talk about this more in the webinar, so you're certainly going to want to register for that. I have a really great visual and things that I share with you there. And when we get snapped back, then we're like, it doesn't work. We tap into self-doubt. See, I knew I couldn't do this. This isn't for me. And like we throw in the towel immediately. And yet we don't even take a moment to pause and look at, oh my gosh, I wrote that plan with a Sharpie. I thought that this was the permanent way, that this was the way it had to go. And that isn't true at all. We have to realize that when we enter the gap, we're going to experience failures. It's inevitable. However, again, how we perceive those failures will either serve us or not. We can look at this as a growing failure or a self-sabotaging failure. And one of them will serve us at a higher level. They'll both serve us in a way. However, we have to decide which one is going to serve our greatness in a way that is going to take us to that end of the gap so that we can expand, evolve, and move into something bigger and better that we're looking forward to. When we're in that gap and we have written this plan with a Sharpie, you have to be willing to cross that off as well. Because when you're in the gap, it's really important that you're looking at observing, evaluating, calling yourself out, making yourself accountable, consciously choosing those choices to support your plan. But unfortunately, many of us don't. And observing is one of probably the most challenging things because we are so close to it. It's hard. It's challenging to observe our thoughts. Heck, we have, like 60,000 thoughts a day. Seriously, can you even imagine trying to keep track of all those thoughts in a day? No, it doesn't work out that way. However, it is a muscle that we must begin to develop. It's a skill. So if you are not observing or evaluating your thoughts, you're certainly going to want to do that. Now, as I mentioned before, the gap can snap us back. Well, the gap likes to snap us back because we're tapping into those energies of hustle, of forcing, of desperation. That energy does not support us. That's the snapback. That's the snapback energy. It's not going to allow you to go to that end result because that end result is a different energy than where you are currently. The gap is a magical space. And we should really honor the gap as as it evolves, as it brings magic forward. Tim Story, who is a life coach, I'm actually reading his current book. I think it's called like The Magic Mentality. But he talks about like 4 phases: mundane, messy, mad, and magical. And those are different situations in our life that we go through those different phases in a sense. But it's our choice. It doesn't have to be mundane. We're choosing that. It doesn't have to be messy. Again, we choose that. Or mad. We're choosing that. We can choose magical. But it takes work. It takes the ability to observe, to evaluate, to call ourselves out. And we don't like to do that because it's uncomfortable for us. And so what I want you to think about is, when you're really looking at writing your plan with a Sharpie, it's really looking at not necessarily all the steps you have to take. Yes, those are important. However, it is, who do I need to become? I'm entering the gap as one person, and yet I want this result at the end of it. Who do I need to become? It is not about how do I do that? It's really stepping back and looking at, who do I need to become? Keep in mind that Sharpie must be perceived as temporary, not permanent. That Sharpie is meant to be able, you must be able to cross that off. You must be able to write something new when you achieve something that you are looking forward to. Because as you move through the gap, you're going to change. You're going to evolve. And when you hit the end of the gap, that is the moment that you expand and you evolve even into something greater. It is going to move you into a new gap. However, that space is meant for your expansiveness. So the gap really doesn't ever end because it allows you to keep expanding, to keep evolving. As I mentioned, you really want to observe and evaluate. Well, you might be thinking like, what do I observe? What do I evaluate? Number 1, your excuses. Like, think about that in terms of health. Health is one of those big situations in our life where it is so easy to excuse ourselves, right? Oh, I'm going to start tomorrow on that fitness program. Oh, I'm going to make a meal plan next week. Oh, I'm going to only have just a little bit, right? And again, like, there's no judgment around that, but dang, we have to call ourselves out on our excuses. We also have to look at what limiting beliefs are surfacing to the forefront. Can we even see those, or are we so attached to what is going on that it's challenging for us to observe? And that happens a lot. And that's why a coach is a really good tool to have in your toolbox, because a coach can look at things from a different perspective because you are just too close to it. You should also be looking at your feelings. And when you're creating some new thoughts or when you're examining your limiting beliefs, you have to look at, where are those feelings showing up in your body? If that feeling is good, that is a sign that the thought is serving you. If the feeling is not good, if it makes you feel bad in any way, you have to look at redeveloping a new thought, something that will support that feeling, because thoughts create feelings, create actions, create results. And then you really have to get tough on yourself and call yourself out on the BS. Whether you want to call it bullshit or bogus stories, whatever, you have to call yourself out on it. You cannot grow and evolve through that gap without you calling yourself out on it or having someone, an observer, a mentor, a coach, call you out on it. And you know what? It's going to trigger you. And that's okay. Because that just is bringing to light something for you to work through, something for you to process, so that you can clear that energy and have a new space for the new energy that will serve you better. Another thing, like when you are creating your plan and really looking at, who do I need to become, is you also want to make sure you're tapping into your feminine energy. And that can be just as simple as lighting a candle or playing some music when you are reflecting on some of this. It could even be pausing and you came up with a new thought and also putting on some great dance music and really allowing the energy of that thought to fully integrate into your body. Perhaps it's even just pausing and baking or cooking or going for a walk in nature and grounding yourself. Even just using different colors is really a good way to spark your feminine energy. Or perhaps even bringing in some pictures or drawing as you're creating that. Don't neglect your feminine energy through this process, because a lot of times, like the plans, the lists, all of that is truly that masculine energy. But remember, we are focusing on who do I need to become? And that's different than creating that list of plans. Keep in mind that all of this is supporting you in creating the best version of yourself at this given moment in time. It's so important for you to be willing to trust the process, to begin to release some of that control, for you to tap back into your inner knowing, your intuition, that deep place within you where you know, like you know, like you know. It is really that place of bringing connection back to you. For so long, so many women have just become disconnected from their true self, just, for a variety of reasons. Women have a lot going on their plate. And if they're a mom as well, like there's extra things to juggle. And so it's very easy to become disconnected. And so we really want to bring that back. So if you're really going to write anything with a Sharpie, it's that. It's trust the process. It's really developing that deep intuition and that deep inner knowing where you know, like you know, like you know, and really reconnecting with yourself. So as I wrap up today, all of this really supports developing, expanding, and really lighting up your greatness in the gap. And there's so much more that I would love to share with you on this podcast, but really I'm going to save it for the webinar because I can bring it all together in a really meaningful, succinct, an hour of your time that's just jam-packed, full of information, education, where you can begin to observe and have that conversation with yourself in terms of, gosh, I'm at a point in my life where I know I'm in the gap. I know I want something different, but how can I maximize that? How can I accelerate my results and do it with ease? Right? And experience that magic in the gap. And so if that is you, I certainly invite you to register for my next webinar, which as of today, I'm recording this podcast on April 5th. The next one is April 7th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So again, that website to register and save your spot is www.greatnessinthegap.com. Keep in mind that website will be updated either the day of a webinar or day before to share what the next webinar date and time is. That website will just keep updating as I am doing webinars the full month of April. We have about 2 per week. So again, that website is greatnessinthegap.com. So as I wrap up today, that question that you want to carve some time out to invest in yourself again is, who do I need to become? Those are the things that you certainly can write with a Sharpie, but keep in mind as you evolve, as you expand, as you upgrade and up-level, you're going to have to change them. You're going to have to cross them out and write something new. So go forward today reinventing yourself in a way that really serves your highest good so that you can really find your greatness and bring it to light in a whole new way, finding your greatness in the gap. Until next time.
Well, what are you waiting for? Whether you've pivoted and are unsure or you're on the verge of pivoting, there is no better time than now for you to begin. Want to know why? Because if it wasn't the right time, the pivot wouldn't have shown up. And to get you started, I've got 3 shortcuts to reinventing thyself. Just head on over to www.reinventingthyself.com and you can download it there. And don't forget to message me with the shortcut that resonates with you the most. One last thing. I know you and I are not the only ones that have leaned into the pivot. Be sure to share this with others so they can be supported too. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for supporting me and sharing this message. Until next time.